Money and politicians, influence and access. Pressures as old as politics itself, but with questions mounting about whether the Ontario Liberals are selling access to their cabinet ministers. We've gathered our Queen's Park veterans to consider what's kosher and what's not. So let's welcome back Greg Sorbara, former Liberal cabinet minister; Janet Ecker, the former PC cabinet minister; Frances Lankin, former NDP cabinet minister; and joining them, Mike Schreiner, current leader of the Green Party of Ontario. And it's good to have everybody around our table here today at TVO. Greg, I want to start with you because not only were you a cabinet minister, but you were also president of the Liberals for a while and therefore had fundraising responsibilities, and this is right in your wheelhouse.
Yep.
So back to basics here. Why do political parties need to raise as much money as they do, as often as they do?
Because it costs a lot of money to run a political party, the machinery, the research, the organization, right down to the riding level, up to the central party, to bring people together. One of my problems in this whole area is that the real dilemma in Ontario is that no political party is sufficiently funded, is funded well enough to do the work that they should be doing. And none of our political parties have the membership, have the participation from the citizenry that we need. I think those are the real problems that political parties face, including facing issues relating to how do they get the money to do the work.
To that end, Martin Regcon from the Toronto Star kind of put this on everybody's radar screen a little while ago with, here's an excerpt from his column back in January. "You won't get rich as a minister of the Crown, but you'll be reeling in big money, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, for Ontario's Liberal Party, trying to meet your assigned fundraising target. That's the price of admission to Kathleen Wynne's Inner Circle, a place where money talks and is a key part of your unofficial job description. Moonlighting ministers who fail to meet their annual targets risk the wrath of a party and a premier who keep defending our indefensible fundraising laws. Wondering why there's so little clamor for reform? Ontario's New Democrats and Progressive Conservatives are conspicuously silent because they, too, profit from such donations." Okay, let's broaden our circle here. Janet, political parties have always had to raise money since time immemorial. Is there anything new and different about the way the Liberals are doing it in Ontario today?
Well, I would suggest that it's a little more blatant in terms of how they are marketing what they're doing, and whether that makes a difference, I don't know. But I can remember, if we even thought of putting on any brochure or marketing thing, access or anything like that, somebody would freak and no, you can't say that because you can't,
Looks like you're selling access.
Yeah, it looks like you're selling access, and I think they've you could give them brownie points for not being hypocritical about it, but I think they have taken it to a new level. The other thing too is that sort of setting goals and standards for ministers. We had to raise money in our riding because one of the things that will guarantee you get elected is how many you've got in your membership base and how much money you have in your riding kitty. So our government pushed all of us to have, and you couldn't get your nomination until you had so much money that you had raised within your riding. But Greg's quite right. That's how you run campaigns. It is legitimately how democracy, rightly or wrongly, it does help make it run.
Frances, I'm trying to remember now. Were you economic development minister, something like that, back in the day? Okay.
One of the portfolios.
One of the portfolios. So, and health minister too, I think, once upon a time. So you're dealing with some very big corporations at that time. Did you have marching orders from Bob Ray? You got to raise X number of dollars from these stakeholders or else?
No, we were talking in the green room earlier, and I said to Greg, I'm actually a little stunned at that. Now, maybe, like you say, maybe it's not hypocritical, but we never had a sense of quotas. Now, did I hold a fundraising? Yeah, but it was actually for my riding. Now, in our party, a certain amount of everything you raise goes to fund the central party. I'm sure it's the same everywhere. And I remember Bob commenting at a fundraising dinner that was being held for my name, for me, that I was the only cabinet minister that could have both the generic and brand name drug companies in the same room together, having worked with them. So yeah, it's true that companies came out, and it's true that that companies pay into, and unions pay into, the investment in the relationships. I don't actually believe for a moment that it has huge influence on policy and shaping policy and what you do. What I think is, though, from a public perception that, as your blogs have said, it doesn't pass the smell test. More and more, I think that that's the case. I think we're coming to a tipping point of a change in policy. And I also think human beings being what they are, and political operatives, all of us are being what we are, people are pushing the rules. And for me, it's more of a question of integrity. What's the, the integrity framework that you bring to the table as you're looking at how to abide by the rules? And we seem to find, all parties seem to find ways to get around what the rules actually mean and push the envelope. And I think that's the problem.
I'm not sure the Greens are doing it yet, although they might wish they were in that company. Do you think the current Ontario fundraising rules pass the stink test?
They absolutely don't pass the stink test.
What's the problem?
Well, I think that one of the biggest problems is that you have corporations and unions making big contributions to political parties, and whether or not it buys access or not, and certainly when you have a major paper suggesting that cabinet ministers have fundraising quotas and suggesting it does buy access, whether it does or not, the perception that it does undermines our democracy and erodes confidence in government. And so I think what Ontario needs to do is follow what the federal government's done, follow what Alberta's done, and Manitoba and other provinces, and ban corporate and union donations to political parties.
Greg, is that an option?
It could be. I mean, I look at it like, democracy is the worst form of government except all the others that have been tried. My problem with the whole discussion is that Ontario's facing a lot of problems. I mean, the state of the economy, what's going on up in north, what's going on east and west. I mean, we have some real problems. And to say that, let me put it this way. You interview 20 people walking down Yonge Street right now and say, what's the real issue for you in Ontario? No one would mention political fundraising.
But they might say, they might say corruption or transparency or
that's the problem with what Martin Cohn read in the Toronto Star, because he suggests corruption. He suggests that Eric Hoskin, by day, a health minister by night, prostituting himself for big donations. And the idea that ministers get their roles based on how much they raise, I know all these guys. Guess who has been in Liberal cabinets for the longest time?
Jim Bradley.
Yeah. Jim Bradley. Guess who is the worst damn fundraiser of anyone who has ever sat in a cabinet? Jim Bradley. So this notion that somehow you get promoted or you get good or your policies get heard based on money. Every cabinet minister in every government, France's, all of them, are encouraged to go out and raise money because that's the way it's done. We might want to think about a fully publicly funded system. Some jurisdictions use that. That cuts out the power of the individual to contribute and participate.
I mean, you need to keep in the system the consumer choice. Because if you say, and I don't mind subsidies or tax breaks for people who give to donations and whatever, but as long as you keep in the fact that any one of us can choose to support that candidate or that party. And because if you don't, I mean, you're first of all, you're locking in the current structure. You wouldn't have new parties be able to come up and, if they weren't able to appeal to people to support them. So I think you need to, whatever you end up doing in terms of subsidies or tax breaks, there needs to be that individual choice. But the other thing that I think is really important about here, there is a very, very big difference, maybe not in perception, but between access and influence. A fundraiser, and when I used to be in the government relations world, and even now, I mean, if I'm working with a minister on a particular file of any political party, I'll buy a ticket to their fundraiser. To me, it's a courtesy. I don't go out and buy tables, but I'll buy a ticket because I think it's a courtesy.
What if they say you can't? What if they say you can't get in to see my minister unless you spend 10 grand on a table?
That's wrong.
But that's what's
wrong. But first of all, that's wrong. But that's wrong. You shouldn't do that. But the other thing is, yes, we've all met with people because they were big donors to the party, but that doesn't mean they got what they wanted. And as a matter of fact, like nobody is going to sell out their political soul on a particular issue for whatever it is, 5, 6, 7, 8 grand. I mean, it doesn't come to you individually, it goes
10.
to your riding.
Let me get Mike on
to
that.
10. But you're not, what drives the decisions of your government is the politics of things. And how many times have we had people that said, well, wait a minute, I gave you guys money. Why are you doing this that's screwing me around?
How is that any different than the person that comes into your constituency office and says, I voted for you in the last election.
Absolutely.
My son needs a job in
That's
government.
right.
Can you help them? You know, it's like, it's the same thing.
It
That's
might
not
get
going
you
to
in the
influence
door,
me.
but it doesn't get you what you want. There's a big difference.
Let me ask the flip side to Mike, which is, do you think for a $10,000 donation to a party, you're necessarily going to get everything you want?
Well, it's hard to say, but I will have to give you some concrete examples. Okay, Midhurst mega development, 16 exemptions to the Places to Grow Act, the government's own legislation to allow a mega development to quadruple the size of a little village. The big developer who got his way, huge donor to the Liberal Party. $100,000.
Don't get a suit here, Mike.
No, I'm
Don't
not.
get a
But I'm
suit,
just,
all
no,
right.
but I'm just saying. So who knows if that had influence or not? But people have asked questions about it. $100,000 private dinner, Bruce Power, with the Premier and the Energy Minister, and then the Darlington new build gets canceled a few months later. Whether or not those events actually led to changes in public policy, the perception that they led to changes in public policy erodes confidence in government, erodes confidence in our democracy, and we have to fix that. The federal government, I think the Chrétien and Martin Liberals, they came up, I thought, with a great system that was a blending of the two. We still had private donations from individuals, not corporations and unions. People vote, not corporations and unions. So citizens could still donate to political parties. I think that's an important part of the political process. Lower the contribution limits to a lower level to make it a fair playing field, and then also add a public subsidy to it as well,
Greg,
so you have a blend.
Greg, you wrote about this in your book, that when you were actually in the caucus of the government of Ontario,
Yeah.
people in the caucus actually wanted to do this.
Yep.
And you said to them, what?
I said, have you gone completely crazy? And the reason was simple. This was 2002. We did not have fixed election dates. We thought that we would be into an election campaign within about 6 months. We were deeply in debt, and I was about to go to the banks to say, would you lend us $8 million so that we can launch a campaign? If I had to go to those banks and say, will you lend us $8 million? And by the way, we are cutting off our major source of contributions. They would have said, how could we possibly do that? And I just tried to make the point in the book, and I will make the point here, that if you want to transition to another system, do it in a way that is fair to all parties, is timely, and to go back to the problem that I identified at first, deals with the problem that all political parties do not have the resources under the current system to do what they want to do. Now, we talk about let's get rid of corporate donations. Guess who would be happiest if we eliminated corporate donations?
Corporations.
The corporations of the province of Ontario. Now, for Mike to suggest that somehow the fact that the good people of Bruce Power, who have been supporting both parties and were created under a conservative government.
I noticed that.
Just
Yeah.
so you know.
Yeah.
No, that somehow launching a dinner where the Liberal Party of Ontario benefited to the tune of $100,000 would influence the government on making decisions on nuclear power that involve billions of dollars
Can I
of
ask the flip side,
expenditure.
though? How would it not? How
Well,
would
it
it
just-
not influence them?
Because the issues related to what we are going to do with our electricity down the line, whether at Bruce or Darlington, are so complex, are reviewed by energy boards, are reviewed by bureaucrats, and have huge implications. I've been to those dinners with Bruce Power, and I can't remember the president's name.
Duncan Hawthorne, just
Hines.
retiring.
We never, at those dinners, we never talked about nuclear energy. It just really wasn't even on the table. It was, how are things going here?
But I've seen, go ahead, Francis, go ahead.
Well, I just want to come to a slightly different point, which is why the heck would Bruce be spending any money giving to political parties when you know that that's going to go into their cost of overhead and go before the OEB and become part of a rate application, et cetera, et cetera.
So why do they do it?
Why? Well, that's a good question. And what are the relationships? There are lots of relationships, not so much the money, but relationships that help people have access and influence. And I think that's more important in getting what they want than the money that goes over.
But Francis, just to your point on Bruce Power spends millions of dollars advertising to the public.
I think they should.
And so $100,000 in political donations, I'm sure they've given to the Conservative Party. I think they have given to the NDP Party.
No, the
I hope
NDP is
they-
anti-nuclear. I don't think they give
I hope
to
they've
them.
given to the Green Party, but probably not.
No.
But the fact is that it's They do that to basically enhance their overall brand.
Yeah, but it's not just that. But one of the things that makes a successful government is to be able to have access to all, to different sources of information, to be able to sit down at a dinner, minister to group, and talk about the issues in some depth without media cameras hanging over you. I understand the issue of perception, and that is an important issue, and I think however we do it, change rules to try and fix that, we need to. But let's not do what changes to the lobby registry, the lobby rules have done, is to cut off the interchange between people in all kinds of groups and government, because you can't have a government relying solely on your bureaucracy and good people doing good stuff.
We get that you've got to meet.
You've got to have that interchange.
But I've seen emails that have gone out, for example, from drug companies to their stakeholders saying, give us X number of thousands of dollars and come meet the Minister of Health, and we'll have a chance to discuss the issues that are front and center on our agenda right now.
And they will, and they'll discuss them, but that doesn't mean that the minister then goes back to cabinet in all cases and says, gee, we're going to do what this drug company wanted. No. Right now, if I was a drug company, given what Deb Matthews did with beating back on the name brand guys, I'd be asking for my money back, right? So, it doesn't necessarily buy you the decision. I said, getting in the door, yes, it can influence getting in the door, but it doesn't
Can we just step back to the whole issue of what the perception is? Greg said this is not one of the top issues in the province. I think it's one of the top issues for the brand of the Liberal Party.
Yes.
I think Kathleen Wynne is a person of integrity. I think the stuff that's gone on, if you add it all up, gives a hit to the integrity part of the Liberal brand that is near fatal. Personally, I think that. And I think that it gives all politicians and all political parties a hit. So I think I come back to this question of integrity. I think that they're pushing it way too far. And I think it should change because I think people are fed up with it. It may be that that's how we've always done it. We may have a really profound belief that we weren't influenced in any way to make decisions because of those donations. But the public just doesn't believe that anymore, and they're already so disengaged. We need to do something to contribute to rebuilding faith in democracy. Timing is important, the NDP in Alberta, the NDP years and years ago under Gary Dewar in Manitoba, it was the first bills they introduced to ban corporate and union, in a new session. You don't wait till now and have Kathleen Wynne and party having been able to raise a whole ton of money and put it in now, and the same way I would say in some of the changes that Harper made, that were convenient to the government, by controlling timing. There are some principles that we've got to have around issues of timing, around issues of it shouldn't be one political party. I was talking to Michael Balagas, who works in Ontario now, but worked in the Manitoba government, and he made the point that this is something that has to step outside of the partisanship. Partisans have to be involved in it, but there has to be a broader engagement of the democratic view of what's right for our country.
There's a reason Donald Trump, might end up being the Republican or even Ted Cruz, God forbid, either one of them, because of that cynicism. I think Francis is right. It's one factor undermining the brand, and it is disconnecting people from their politicians, or the perception is disconnecting them, and it's very dangerous, I think.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, can you imagine, given the very close relationship between the public sector unions in the province of Ontario and this Liberal government of Ontario, can you imagine what in effect would be unilateral disarmament by this Liberal government by saying no more union donations?
Oh, absolutely.
You can imagine them doing it?
No, I imagine their reluctance in doing it precisely for the reason that Greg mentioned. It's not in their best interest to do it. But you know what? This isn't about what's best for Greg Sorbera and the Liberal Party. It's about what's best for our democracy and our citizens.
No, it really is about what's best.
It is.
Isn't it? Isn't that why we're here?
But Greg, there is one thing I want to agree with you on, and that is I do think our political parties are underfunded. And I think, ironically, one of the ways to re-engage political parties with citizens is to actually ban corporate and union donations, because that will require parties to go out and raise money from citizens in small contributions and to engage them, mobilize them, energize them to want to support political parties.
I have to respond to that because, and maybe this is really France's argument. Yes, let's change it so that we go after the individual citizen. Let's disenfranchise unions' participation in our democratic process.
They could give us individual union members.
The history over the past 30 years in the United States of America and in Canada is to marginalize more and more the effect of working people primarily through unions. And, it's not just on political fundraising. And the fact is that this is not good for our society. The fact that people unite, create unions, work together, give as one, has been very healthy.
Put a vote into the union so they can choose, because how many union members would complain about, I don't support the political choice of my union
I've
leader,
heard that
right?
about, the poor union member who has to pay dues and he doesn't completely agree. That's part of our system, and it is not healthy.
How do you get around, though?
Remember,
Let me jump in with this, if you know. How do you get around the appearance of stink when union gives X number of thousands of dollars to Liberal Party, Liberal Party then negotiates contract with same union? It looks very cozy, doesn't it?
Steve, in your articles and in Martin's article, you feed the perception. You use, this doesn't pass the stink test. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying if you take steps to make it even more difficult for political parties to raise money, even less attractive for individuals to join in political parties, you're not improving the health of our system.
How about, Francis, how about publicly funding election campaigns?
I absolutely agree with going that way. I think you have to keep the personal connection for people to be able to donate as individuals, but I think we should be moving that way. I'd look to even further than that, examples of, and I don't know if this is currently the case, but for years in the UK, Whitehall had a publicly funded research office for research for the opposition, providing everybody with good quality information. It might make you be a little bit more honest in terms of the things that we all say, or
Evidence-based decision making?
Evidence-based decision making. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
That's too radical for Ontario.
So
Don't go there.
I believe that is an important way to go. We have elements of it in our system now with the kind of tax credits and rebates and stuff. Let's make that completely transparent. Let's make it connected to the party's engagement with the public and how the public supports them.
But the other thing here too, first of all, so the feds did change the rules so that corporations and unions, so it would be individual donations. I don't see any great improvement in the public's belief about the system federally is cleaner than provincially.
Exactly.
So
right.
there is that issue. But the second issue is if there's going to be comprehensive reform, and I think there does need to be an all-party committee to sit down and say, where do we want to take this? Because I think everybody's made very valid points here. You have to include third-party advertising. Because you can ban
Working Families Coalition,
absolutely,
that kind of thing.
Absolutely, and you've got to figure. And I'm not saying you ban third-party advertising because I don't agree with that. But you need to level the playing field, because if you're a government or you're an opposition leader, or even, and in my case, in my riding, you have limits about what you can do. And I had a couple of developers who wanted to go after me because they wanted to develop the egg preserve. Promise had been made. I said no. And they came after me. Now, I don't think it beat me, but some people will tell you that all of that money, over $100,000 at least, people figure they spent against me. Now, that's their right to spend and voice their view, and the voters make the decision. But you have to have an equal playing field somehow. So I think it's got to be comprehensive.
Thanks, everybody, for this discussion, which I know is number one of all of the concerns of the people of Ontario today. Greg Sorbera. I know it is.
As long as Martin and you are writing about it, that's all they're thinking about.
That's Greg Sorbera, along with Francis Lankin on the left side of the table, and Janet Ecker and Mike Schreiner, leader of the Greens, on the right-hand side of the table. Thanks, everybody, for coming in for this discussion tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.